Problem 4. Amy is pulling a sled down the road toward a hill. She is pulling with a force of 6 newtons. The ground friction is acting with a force of 1 newton. What is the net force? And somehow I have lost the highlighting on my 1 newton. So let's add that on there. Okay, so I'm going to set up the formula. And I have a feeling that you've noticed this formula because it looks so scary. But it really isn't. Once you learn how to read this formula and break it down, it'll be okay. Some of these look very bad, but once you see them worked out, they're not nearly as scary. So this is the net force formula, and let me write it down and then I'll tell you what all this means. Net force is force 1 plus force 2, and if you had more forces, you would add those in there. You could have hundreds of thousands of them. You just keep adding as many as you have. But in this particular case, we only have 2. So I'm just going to go out to force 2. So here is force 1. And this is force 2. This does not mean to the second power. Remember, these are subscripts. So be careful that you don't square the numbers. And this is called net force. So anytime you see this symbol, this is a Greek letter called sigma. So let me come over here and this is a Greek letter from the Greek alphabet. And whenever you see sigma, it means to add. That is the sum feature. If you use Microsoft Excel at your job, you've probably seen sigma. It's a quick way to add up numbers on Excel. So sigma is the symbol for net force because it means that we're adding up the forces that we have. So let's come down here and make our spaces. So net force is what we're trying to find. Force 1 is going to be Amy's pulling. And she's pulling at a force of 6 newtons. Force 2 is the ground friction. And friction is an opposing force. It's working against Amy. So we're going to say that that is negative 1 newton. So Amy's pulling. She's working at 6 newtons. The ground is pulling against her. And then we're looking for the sum of those forces. So let me just follow through here. Force 1 is Amy. Force 2 is the friction. And that's all the force we have in this problem. If we had someone helping Amy, we would have a third force. So it's going to be a matter of the story that you have as to how many forces you have. But in our situation, here is, oops, didn't mean to do that. Force 2. We counted Amy, who is force 1. And you could reverse those. It doesn't matter because you're adding. And this is going to give you the net force. So this very scary formula simply comes down to this. 6 minus 1. So the net force is 5. We're looking at a net force of 5 newtons. When you take Amy's effort minus the friction of the ground, you are left with your net force. And that's all there is to it. Even though it looks terribly scary, it is tough. It's tough to understand. But if you know how to read it, it's not nearly as bad.